Hello, 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 and welcome back to our weekly Sunday school lesson. I am Elder Latanya Milliken of the All Nations Church in Oakland, California. My pastor is Bishop Terrence L. Milliken, and this is our final lesson, lesson 13 in our spring quarter. The date of the lesson is May the 29th, 2022. This is a pre-recorded session. Tonight is Friday evening, May the 27th. And I mentioned that because I'm going to recognize my Aunt T's birthday. But before we do that, the subject of the lesson is Paul's thorn in the flesh. And we are wrapping up 2 Corinthians. And our lesson today is the 12th chapter and the 1st through the 10th verse. So again, that's 2 Corinthians, the 12th chapter, the 1st through the 10th verse. And so Paul's thorn in the flesh. We're going to learn something about that. I know I learned something about that. But before we get to the Sunday school lesson, I want to give a shout out to my auntie. She's my mother's elder sister, Mrs. Lucille Overton Reed. She is a pillar in the family, and I'm telling you, she turned, well, the day is far spent. You can see that it's a little dark. But it was her birthday today. Happy birthday. We refer to her as Mama Lou. And she was a retired school teacher and an entrepreneur. She owned her own motel in New Orleans. And she still, at 90 years old, have her own daycare and is doing an amazing job. My hat's off to you. God bless you. Keep on keeping on as long as you like. I want to honor her by reading her favorite quote. It is, "Let me live in my house by the side of the road and be a friend to man." And yes, you have been a friend not only to man, but to mankind. Some exciting news. Oh my God, last night, didn't the Warriors just pull it off? Oh my God, we are the Western champions, Western Conference champions. And so we entered an elite group. We are going into the playoffs 6 times in an 8-year period, and only 3 other teams have done that: the Chicago Bulls, the LA Lakers, and the Boston Celtics. And so congratulations, Golden State Warriors, which is our Bay Area basketball team for those of you who are tuning in around the world. And so we're excited. We're having a good time. We are going to the finals, and we'll cheer them on, and hopefully we'll be celebrating in a victorious parade. Now let me just kind of shift gears here and talk about an incident that happened in our nation this week. And I want to solicit your prayers for this nation, for our nation. And specifically for all of the residents in Uvalde, Texas. It's 90 miles out of San Antonio. I have grandchildren that live in San Antonio. I know you have your personal thoughts and feelings. I mean, there are no words for this. And according to one source, we've had 213 mass shootings since the beginning of the year. It's just pray. Don't stop praying. Even though they took prayer out of the schools, that does not mean you as a believer stop praying. And and if you are in a position to make a difference, make a difference. And again, we took prayer out of the school, but that doesn't mean we could stop praying. I'll share with you. When we were in elementary school, my mom was a school teacher and an administrator for Oakland Public Schools for 30 plus years. She would leave home first to go to school. To go to work. And my dad, until we were old enough to leave the house on our own and lock the door, latchkey kids, he would send us off to school. He would make sure we had our lunch. But we had this routine. And in the routine, before we walked out the door, he would pray for us. He would physically put his hand on our head and say a prayer for each of us. It was 4 of us. And we memorized the prayer. And it wasn't a forced thing. It was a part of our culture, a part of our routine in the morning. And we would run to Daddy and say, Daddy, pray for me so I can go. And we would lean in so he would put his hand on our head. We are living in a day and time where we cannot afford not to cover, oh, my earring came off, cover our children in prayer. So pray. Let's keep prayer in our homes. And one other thing I want to share is that I'm teaching Sunday school. And we've been in COVID. We're coming out of COVID. It's been 2 years. Make sure your children know about Jesus. Make sure your children know they must have a relationship with God and they must love their neighbor. It's lessons like this that helps turn behaviors around. I believe that Sunday school is teaching me how to be a better citizen and a better Christian. But what are we doing for our children to learn? Some churches have eliminated Sunday school, don't even want Sunday school. But are you teaching your children? It's been 2 years. No children's church, no Sunday school. I'm just giving a shout out. We need Sunday school. The message needs to go out. We need to make sure our children know they must love their neighbor. They must love. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not steal. All of the commandments. They must know, they must learn. And if you're not bringing them to church, make sure you teach them. But it's always good to hear from another source. Okay, I'm going to stop preaching and teach now. Let's go to our Sunday school lesson because Paul have an excellent message for us today. And so Paul begins. I'm not going to do the reading. I'm just going to jump right in. Hopefully you've done the reading. Again, that's the 2 Corinthians, the 12th chapter, the 1st through the 10th verse. And so real quickly, Paul began by sharing that he had a vision. 14 years before he wrote the 1st and 2 Corinthians, he had a vision from the Lord. And he didn't record it. He's just mentioning it. We don't know the details. He was caught up into the third heaven. Okay, so the first heaven is the earth atmosphere. The second heaven is your outer space. The third heaven is what you cannot see. It's beyond your vision. It's where God lives. And he was caught up and he heard things and he saw things. But he was prohibited from sharing these things. And so Paul was sharing this fact that he had this vision to validate his apostolic authority. He was constantly having to defend himself to the members of the church at Corinth, specifically the well-to-do. Okay, and so the Corinthians like to boast about themselves, but Paul only wanted to boast in the Lord. So let's talk about Paul real quick, because Paul had this solid resume. He had academic accomplishments. He was a prize pupil of the renowned first century Rabbi Gamaliel. He spoke multiple languages. He was a Pharisee. He wrote 14 of the 27 books in the New Testament. He was a Roman citizen. He was a devout Jew, so he knew culture, the wrong culture, the Jewish culture. He was a church planner. He worked very hard. He was dedicated to the ministry. He loved Christ. He loved the church at Corinthian. And so he had all of this going for him. But many of them still did not accept Paul. And so Paul is helping us in our lesson today to understand that he had this thorn in the flesh. Okay? He had he was being sort of I don't want to say tormented. He called it a messenger of Satan. It was this unpleasantness, this discomfort. He was being tortured by it. It was afflicting. It was seeking to destroy him. And if you've been on this journey, Paul, well, actually in this series of lessons, we didn't go into detail. Some of the things, Paul was arrested, and he was beaten. Some things that we didn't really cover in this lesson, but specifically at for the church of Corinthians, he was being challenged, insulted, persecuted. He had personal troubles. And so this thorn in the flesh, Paul prayed. He prayed and asked the Lord to remove it. And the Lord said, I'm not going to remove it. My grace is sufficient. I'm giving you grace. I'm giving you grace to go through it. I'm giving you grace to handle it. Okay? And so after this vision is when this thorn in the flesh came. Because after the vision, the Lord didn't want Paul to become prideful or to look down on others or to be conceited because of this experience that he had. Because Paul had this experience that not many others had. And in his flesh, it would have been easy for him to get prideful. It would have been easy for him to be conceited. Because sometimes, that it's a fleshful is what happens. When we're exceptionally good at things, or we've had this exceptional experience, we feel like we're better than others. And so Paul was given this thorn in the flesh. And it was not to it was to help him to not to become conceited. Because Paul was not immune to these tendencies. He was a man, and he was not immune to becoming conceited or to become prideful or to look down on others. And so Paul played an important part. Think about, Paul wrote 14 of the books out of the 27 books in the New Testament. So Paul being prideful or having an ego would have destroyed his ministry. And so Paul began to understand. He understood when he learned that God had given him the grace to handle his affliction, his trials, his struggles. And remember, last week we learned about how Paul, or a few weeks back, Paul understood that whatever he went through, eventually the Lord was going to bring him out. And that's how he matured. He matured because after going through so many things, he knew the Lord would rescue him eventually. But I promise you, it's still not easy. And so the lesson helps us to understand that humility is important in a Christian life, especially important for people in leadership. And so this thorn in the flesh, let's look at it. Let's really take a look at what this thorn in the flesh was. It was an instrument of grace and not judgment. It was a built-in tool to prevent Paul from sliding into the sin of pride. It was God's protection. And then Paul learned to be content in his weakness. Interesting. This was a good lesson. This was an excellent lesson. In fact, here's what I learned from this lesson as I wrap it up and give you the gift of time. So I believe you can win. I believe you can be number one. And I believe you can be perfect in some things. Okay. This week, we had, you all know I work for JP Morgan Chase. I'm a branch manager at the Oakland Community Center, and I'm a branch manager. And so, we typically have audits, and an audit can cause you to lose your job. It could cause you a great deal of embarrassment among your peers. And then it will cause you to lose some of your bonus at the end of the year. And so the audit is important, right? And I've always wanted a perfect audit, because I believe you can have a perfect audit. I believe you can be number one, and I believe you can win. And so this week we and audits are not planned. You don't know. So our auditor surprised us, came on Tuesday. That morning I arrived to work late because I was dealing with an issue and had a phone call, and the phone call made me late. And I get this text, auditor's here. And I've had a text before because they thought somebody else was the auditor. But lo and behold, when I got there, the auditor was there. And so I had on my schedule that day 4 Zoom calls. So throughout the entire day, I wasn't even involved in the audit. I just went 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, got something to eat, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. By 3 o'clock, I go to the auditor and I says, okay. So, well, she was waiting on me to test me and to test my keys. Long story short, once we were done, I asked her, I said, so what's on my audit? What I got to deal with? What I got to know? And she says, nothing. Your audit is perfect. Turn the screen around and the paper was blank. Not even a period on there. Nothing. No issues. Because I believe you can be perfect. And right now we're number one in some categories because I believe you can be number one. But I promise you, baby, I do have some thorns in the flesh that keep me balanced. I have had some embarrassing moments. I've had situations. I've had struggles. I've had hardships. I've had disappointments. I have sciatic that comes and goes. And I'm like, what? What? When will it ever go away? This lesson helps me to understand that things come in our lives as believers to keep us humble, to keep us balanced, and not slide into pridefulness. Thank you, Paul, for this lesson. Thank you for helping me understand that there are things that come in our lives that keep us humble, especially in leadership, so that we will not sin, so that we will be protected, so that we will learn, so that we will grow, so that we will become mature, understanding that whatever you go through, Christ will see you through. And we are in sanctification, the process of sanctification. We don't get our glorified bodies until we leave here. We have learned so much in this quarter. I have. I hope you have too. It's been an amazing quarter. Every quarter is amazing. I've learned so much. I want you and asking you to please share the gospel. The world needs the gospel. If you have not seen it, I just take my word for it. Please share the Sunday school. The world needs it. Like it, share it, comment, and subscribe. And until, listen, this is the next week. I'm not next week. Yeah, next quarter's Sunday school book. We are servants and healers. I know we're going to learn some great things as we continue on this journey. I love you. Please continue to pray. Please make sure your children are learning that they have a spiritual wellness. And you have a spiritual wellness. Your spiritual wellness is learning about your spiritual man. That is more important. Focus on spiritual things and not on natural things. Learn so much. Thank you all so much once again. God bless you. Until next week, God bless you.